Jeff Koinange live high above the CBD on the rooftop of the Intercontinental Hotel, and it's getting pretty hot out here despite the chill in the air, because we're talking issues, a report card check on the state of the nation, everything from devolution to the state of insecurity to the VAT bill to the ICC. That's what we are breaking down. And now something called ushenziness, misbehaving in public by some of our leaders. Who better to talk about that than a man who started an initiative several years back called Ungwana Initiative. He also has an institute called Ungwana, and it talks about everything from overlapping while driving to just being downright courteous. And when it comes to people we elect and they misbehave in public, well, that's the opposite of Ungwana. That's Ushenzi. Ken Njiru on the bench. My brother.
Jeff.
Good to see you.
It's good to see you.
As always.
Asante.
We need you in this country now more than ever, my brother, because when the Shebeshans start doing what the Shebeshans do,
yes,
you know, that's pretty pitiful, isn't it?
It is pitiful. It is pitiful, and really that is what now I call Ushenzi Kamili. There are levels of Ushenzi.
Yes.
There is Ushenzi, and then there is when you push it to the limit, we call it Ushenzi Kamili.
Yeah.
If what we saw in the media and what we've been seeing on the, especially the social media, is what is, that is Ushenzi Kamili. And indeed, for me, we cannot have leaders doing this type of things. And it is time that we literally, even as the people of this republic, started calling them to account. In fact, in my mind, I'm clear that if this such incidences happened in what you may call the mature democracies, then all these leaders would have resigned. But they're still calling themselves leaders.
Yeah. Because, Ken,
yes,
when you see a leader slapping another leader in public and then denying it moments later that they don't remember.
Ushenzi. Total Ushenzi. In fact, when I was watching that incident, first of all, I could not believe that Kidero could slap Shebesh.
Yeah. Or anyone for
let
that
alone
matter.
anyone for that matter.
Yes.
As the boss, really, the governor of the city. And moments later, he comes out and remembers that, as he was saying, Shebesh inappropriately, grabbed him, so to speak. Yeah. But he could not remember that he threw a slap. And I said to myself, how do you then trust a man like this to run the affairs of the city? If he can remember one thing, but he can't remember the other one in another instance.
Yeah.
I think, again, in an ordered state, and if we were really applying the provisions of Chapter 6 of Leadership and Integrity, he should not be in the office.
And speaking of Chapter 6, again, Shebesh and Sonko.
Yes.
I mean, come on.
Terrible.
These are our leaders.
But again, let us. I keep saying many times we will turn the spotlight on Shebesh and Sonko, but the question is, do they reflect us?
Yeah.
Are we quiet because they reflect who we are? Are these the same things that we are doing in our homes? Are these the same things we are doing on the roads? And more, for me, the answer is yes. I mean, open the newspaper. You're finding a father who has raped 2 girls. And basically, the story goes on. We've been reading, I don't know whether you've been seeing it in the newspaper, a story of a young girl who was raped by some young people out in Busia who have not even been brought to book. It seems to be normal. I mean, I keep on saying that, we've gotten to a point where, the police will come on television and say they are treating this as a normal crime. Yeah. We have normalized crime.
What is a normal crime?
So we call it normal crime. And that means, don't even think about it. This is normal crime, And I think, in my mind, I am clear, Jeff, that we are at a point in time when we must now start looking at the software of as far as this country is concerned. In my mind, I keep saying the last 20, 30 years have been about putting the hardware into place. And now we have the hardware. We have the Constitution. We have Vision 2030. We have basic instruments and policies and laws that we're trying to cobble together. But without the hardware that drives the person who then takes this Constitution and actualizes it, because the Constitution is written not necessarily on paper, but on the fleshy tablets of our hearts, then this Constitution becomes a piece of paper.
Yeah, and it's not worth the piece of paper.
It's not worth the piece of paper it is written on. And so for me, I think the most critical thing that we'll have to do, and I keep on saying that it has been said severally that when good people keep quiet, evil always festers. And in this sense, when the people who believe that they are wangwana and they can stand in the gap do not stand in the gap, then Ushenzi festers. Yes. And this is what we are seeing. Ushenzi festering left, right and center.
And you know, we thought that on March the 4th,
yes,
we had turned the corner, Ken. We thought we had turned the corner, but we're still where we were before, if not further behind.
I don't think it's going to be that easy, Jeff, because like I said, you and I, and by you and I, I'm talking about literally everybody in this country, must simply just get up and just, stand in the gap. We must start addressing the question of values. We must ask ourselves, what does it mean to be human again? There is one particular value we talk about in Ungwana, which I call utu, and I keep on saying Ungwana ni utu, ushenzi unyama. What we are seeing is a populace that is increasingly descending into that sense of animalism instead of rising to our true nature, where we practice utu, where your brothers, your sisters' cry is your cry, where if one person is hurting, we're all hurting. If one person is laughing, we're all laughing. I mean, I've seen incidences where, for instance, and I'm not saying they're the paragon of virtue, if you touch one American, they all come for you because they believe, we are all together. In Kenya, it doesn't matter whether people die like flies. All right? Day one, it's on the news. Day two, we forget it. Correct. And move to the next big matatu thing that has killed another 20 people.
Correct.
All right? I mean, think about the road accidents in this country. We are killing about 3,000 people every year. Every year, and it's continuing.
Divide that by 12.
Yes.
That's about 300 a month.
Every month, 300 people are dying. But you know what? As I was watching what was happening in Westgate, we lost about 67 people, and God rest their souls in eternal peace. Yes. But sometimes you ask yourself, does it matter how you die? You're talking about 300 people dying every month. And that becomes a side issue.
Yeah.
And so when the terrorists come and hit us and 67 die, we are up in arms. How many people are dying in this country, Jeff, because of lack of medicines, because of corruption in the ministries of health? Cancer. Drugs, we saw another day, drugs upon drugs being burnt because they've expired. They simply did not get out to the people. And you and I and everybody else had had put together their money, or rather our taxes, to buy those drugs. And people are dying.
And people get away with it.
And people get away with it. And this cycle continues. And indeed, we are talking about Westgate, but how did those guys, even in the first instance, get through our porous borders? I mean, it is common knowledge that those guys will bribe their way right from Somalia to Nairobi.
Yeah.
Our policemen.
Yeah. And they will rent a store for a year, pay in advance, and no one will think twice.
And by the way, they will even live next to your house, as Jeff Koinange. And you will not even bother to know what this guy does. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, know your neighbors.
It's a whole. We need what we call a paradigm shift. We must start asking ourselves, what does it mean to be a nation? And a nation is more than just picking a pen and writing law, constitutions and writing laws. It is about the spirit, the essence of a human being. The good book tells us that it must be of the spirit to save the flesh. And in fact, for me, I am convinced now more than ever before that what this country needs is a spiritual revolution. And by a spiritual revolution, what I'm talking about is us rising to that level of, what it means to be human. And then we can start operating efficiently. We can start creating. We can start innovating. We can start making the birds that fly. We can start making these cameras that we are using today to televise what we're televising. We can start making these things that we are using here, the iPads and the iPhones. Yeah. We can truly go digital.
And if we keep idolizing these so-called leaders, Ken, we keep putting them in office.
Yes.
They'll continue to be a reflection of us.
Oh,
we
yes.
get what we deserve.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. There are very many leaders. You and I know. These men and women, some of them should not be in that parliament. But what do? We elect them. Why do we elect them? Mutu wetu. And by the way, we collapse. It doesn't matter whether you're a professor. You find a professor collapsing to that level of mutu wetu. He's doing nonsense. Lakini kwa sababu ni wetu, we elect him.
Yeah.
And so these are the type of things that we must tell ourselves, enough is enough. And by the way, one of the things I keep on saying about the human being, we've been given, it is our God-given gift, so to speak, to rise to the occasion. It is our God-given gift to amend our ways. It is our God-given gift to be able to think through what we are doing, to ask ourselves questions, fundamental questions, and to elevate our thinking from even a spiritual perspective, because that is how we are made.
This software you talk about, Ken, do we need to reboot it? Do we hit Control or Delete?
Totally. We need to reboot it. We need to reboot. We need to stand erect. In fact, I was thinking as I was coming here, I was thinking about our history. You remember there was the history we used to read about the Zinjanthropus.
Yes.
And from the Zinjanthropus, we came to the level where we became Homo erectus.
Correct.
Meaning we stood
upright man.
Upright man, and we became human beings.
Yeah.
Many of us are still operating at the level of the Zinjanthropus. And yet our heritage is Homo erectus. We must stand erect and ascend to that station of humanness. Because the minute you don't do that, then there's no difference between you and a dog. I keep on saying, if you go to one of our towns here, you'll find those dogs that run around looking for a stray dog, looking for food. You see, that dog does not have the consciousness. It doesn't have the capability to rise up and sit on a bench like this and talk. You see, but the human being has the ability to descend to a level of a dog. All right. And so when you go to an accident scene and you ask somebody, is there kuna mtu amekufa? You hear somebody saying, no, ni mkisi moja tu na mama wawili. Because to you, those are not human beings.
Yeah.
They don't come from your community. And that type of language, you then keep knocking it on everywhere you go.
Yeah.
And to it.
Absolutely. I'm going to come back to the Westgate part, Ken, because the first couple of days, we were praising the KDF.
Yes.
They went in, they did their job, came out, we were praising them. And then we found out the real story, the Ushenziness that was taking part in that
what transpired. Without even flogging that horse, Jeff, I like peeling the mask, as it were.
Yes. Our friend wrote a book about it.
Peeling the mask, or pulling back the mask, as it were.
Yes.
Who are the KDF? The KDF are you and me, Jeff. How many times have we heard of stories of accident victims being, frisked? People go to an accident scene in this country
and pickpockets.
And the first thing you do is go into the pockets of the people who are bleeding.
Correct. They're not
and
even
the people
dead.
who are dying. They're not dead.
No.
They're crying for help, and you're removing money from their pockets and everything that you can get. You're removing their watches and then walking away. It happens every day in this country.
What went wrong, Ken? I mean, you said the hardware is in place, but that
software, a sense of who we are. And by the way, that is our human heritage. Values are in us. But we behave like those characters who light lamps and then cover them.
Yeah.
And then there's darkness. And the minute we do not rise up to that level of our humanness, then we descend to a level where we cannot even handle our own affairs. And thus we find ourselves in The Hague. Because we cannot reform our judiciary here. Yet it is not that, by the way, we don't have the critical skills. No. We have judges, we have lawyers, who in terms of skills, we have it there. The hardware is in place, but the software is wrong.
And then we get to The Hague and we start crying foul.
Yes. Don't be vague.
Let's go to The Hague.
Go to The Hague.
You get there.
Yes.
You say, let's come back.
Let's come back.
Ken, man, I don't know what went wrong, but we need to talk about this. I guess the more we talk about it, maybe the more people will understand.
The more people will question themselves.
I want to talk more about this after break, but before we do that, let me read a couple of tweets, man. They're coming in thick and fast, Ken. They're coming in thick and fast. Odundari Mogeni, you say, Ken Njiru, our leaders must propose to live a life of integrity holistically.
Yes.
That's what you're saying, holistically.
Yep.
Right? Kelvin O'Driscoll, he says, Ken Njiru is so on point. Huh? Ashiko is saying, Ken Njiru breaking it down. Jim Baita, you're saying, Ungwana ni wetu, Ushenzi ni unyama.
Unyama.
That's deep, man.
Animalism.
That's deep. When we come back, and I want to talk about the president.
Yes.
Does he go to The Hague or does he not go? That is the question. A lot of people think he shouldn't go. His colleagues in Africa think he shouldn't go. Should he swallow his pride? Show up on the 12th of November. Think about it. Come back.
Sunday.
Wow. This bench is on fire. And it's only Wednesday. Ken Njiru, Barack Maluka, talking sense at last. That's what we were missing. But now it's back on the bench. Don't even think of touching that remote control, because you know the bench is back in a moment. Oh, I got to read John Allen's. And welcome back to Jeff Koinange live above the CBD. The texts and the tweets are coming in thick and fast. Ken Njiru, the Ungwana man, still joining me here. Let me read a couple of quick SMSs. Helen Muturia, you say, hi, Jeff. Barack has always been a balanced analyst. I totally agree. Here's another one. Barack Muluka, proud that Kenya has such smart brains. I admire you. And here we go with a couple of tweets. John Allen Namo, I have to read your tweet, my brother. Thank you for watching the show. You say, where are you, John? You say, such a sobering conversation on JKL tonight. We are nothing without our values, Ken.
Oh, yes.
Isn't that right?
Without values, all is lost.
Absolutely. Here's another one. Ungwana. They say the software, a sense of who we are, our heritage needs to awaken. Right? I mean, and you know, the thing about it, Ken, this is not rocket science.
No, it's not. You know, there's a statement that people bandy around. Soft is hard. You know, when we talk about soft values, people think there's nothing to them. And yet, soft values, or what we call values, are what make our, our underpinnings. In fact, our roots, our human roots, are basically founded on values. And so when those roots are rotten, then our actions are rotten. Yeah. And indeed, I mean, I keep on saying, think about the average parent who has a child. What would you do to your child who, if he comes and picks 100 bob from, your coat? And you know he's picked it up.
And you've seen him do it.
And you've seen him do it. You admonish him and tell him you can't do that. But what happens when we go out there? Yeah. You as the father, you're the same person, by the way, who's nicking, as Balak Murunga was saying, money from people's steals.
There's another tweet from Kodiani. He says, I hope all leaders are watching this.
I hope so too.
You think the president is watching?
I hope he's watching.
If he is, Ken, does he go to The Hague or not? I asked Barack this question earlier on.
Yes.
Does he go to The Hague?
I think, by the way, for me, I have spanned that question fundamentally. And one of the things I'm saying, I don't think for me it's as simple as some people want to put it. It is not just a question of saying that there is a law that has been put into place. I want to take a few steps back and appreciate the fact that we are living within what I may call a geopolitical context. Yeah, we are living in an era where there's always the question of national interests. I've been asking myself, or rather, let me put it this way: yes, Kenya did sign up to the Rome Statute, yep. And there is a provisioning, for instance, for any country to withdraw from the Rome Statute if it doesn't want to withdraw from the Rome Statute. I've also asked myself the question: why has America refused to sign up to the Rome Statute? And I did a bit of research, and I came across a fellow called John Bellinger, who was one of the legal advisors of the State Department, saying that one of the reasons why America will not sign up to the Rome Statute is because the prosecutor has rogue powers. That was America saying the prosecutor has rogue powers. I want to cite Robin Cook, who was the foreign secretary of Tony Blair, saying that, when people were saying that Tony Blair should be held to account because of what they had done in Iraq, as the Americans call it. Robin Cook said that the ICC was not set up to haul British prime ministers and American presidents to the court. He actually said that. All right? Yeah. And when you ask yourself why 41 countries that are members of the United Nations are not members of the ICC, including India, including China, including Russia, there is a reason. And so to that extent, it is not, for me, it is not, I can't say it is diabolical for Kenya to say that it wants to withdraw from the Rome Statute. Sure. The question becomes, why do they want to withdraw from the Rome Statute? Secondly, I think for me, it is whichever way you look at it, and I say this, not sincerely from my heart, I think for any nation to be happy that their president is being held in front of an ICC, of an international court, I think that is, it is not right. It is not right.
And let's not forget, Ken, that all 23 cases being investigated at the ICC
are African cases.
Are African cases.
Yes. Something is wrong. And by the way, if you look at, again, if you go to Iraq, for instance, when George Bush was the president, he told us that there were weapons of mass destruction. They moved in. People died. In fact, to date, about 130,000 people have died. Yeah. And the war continues. Yeah. They marched into Libya the other day. They told us Gaddafi was a bad man. They killed him.
Yeah.
Today, there are killings every day.
Libya's a mess.
Is a mess.
Yeah. Syria, 200,000 killed, maybe?
Yes.
If not more.
And for me, the question then I'm asking myself is, and by the way, I keep saying that obviously I do want to see justice for the 1,300 people or so who died during the post-election violence. But I'm saying to myself, if I went to the Kenyan courts, and in my heart of hearts, I knew there was no justice. Right now, we're saying we want to reform the Kenyan courts. If you, as Jeff Koinange, went to the Kenyan courts and you felt that you will not get justice from the courts, why should you walk in because you're a Kenyan citizen and you are centered to the Kenyan constitution? I think that is the question that the Africans are asking. And by the way, do not forget that this may not be, for me it's ironical that Uhuru Kenyatta, the son of Jomo Kenyatta, is being taken to an international court. If you think about what happened in Kapenguria, it was another international court. Why was Kenyatta being held in front of the British justice then? Because they were calling him a terrorist. A terrorist for doing what? Fighting for the freedom of his people. It is the same courts that imprison people like Nelson Mandela for 27 years. Why? Because he was fighting for the freedom of his people. I mean, with these cases, we can multiply them. Patrice Lumumba, who killed Patrice Lumumba?
Yeah.
Who overthrew Kwame Nkrumah?
We know who.
Who has been getting in the way of Africa trying to get up every time he tries to get up? We are talking about Johnson as the president of Liberia. And by the way, the time Taylor, sorry, I'm talking about Taylor, the time he was doing whatever he was doing, there was a robust trade of what you're calling blood diamonds.
Correct.
And a lot of the multinational companies were making money. How come nobody talks about the multinational companies? In fact, all they do is slap them on the hand and then they take Taylor to the Hague.
Brings me to my next tweet. Karaoke says, has Ken Njiru thought of stepping up from a Nungwana campaign to a Nungwana mass movement?
I believe, by the way, it must become a mass movement. And I fundamentally believe that that is the next level to take this campaign, so that people then start taking responsibility across the country. And that's the question we've been asking ourselves. But before I even go to that, Jeff, I just want to say one more thing about the whole question of the Hague. For me, what would I want to see? I would want to see ourselves, again, when I talk about, if I may call it that, an Ungwana reformation. I'm talking about a situation where when we stand up and become homo erectus as human beings, we are able to establish, and I know we can do it on our feet, institutions that work. A judiciary that work. The type of nonsense we are seeing here now must end. We cannot have cat and mouse games between the registrar and the rest of the judges that are sitting in the JSC. I mean, that is total ushenzi.
Complete ushenzi.
Complete ushenzi. And these are the challenges that we are having. And it is not that we cannot do it. We can do it. But we need to call on something higher. We need to be able to say that, yes, we made mistakes. We need to be able to say that we can be able to reform at these mistakes. One more issue. I've been asking myself, for instance, just for example, if the ICC finds Uhuru Kenyatta culpable, just for example, and Uhuru culpable, and they says now tunawafungia, Jeff, I can assure you one thing. If anybody thinks there will be peace in this country, oh, you are lying. Yeah. Oh, you are lying. And it is not the first time that, by the way, the other mechanisms of resolving peace issues have been used in the world.
Ireland, good example.
Ireland is a good example.
Okay. Eric W. Mungai says, we question impunity at the bottom.
Yes.
Yet at the top, we laud them.
Yes.
Illegal Somalis obtain false IDs from top officials.
It has been happening. I mean, it's an open secret. It's an open secret.
Yeah. From Yara House all the way down.
Oh, yes.
And we let it happen.
And these are the things now we must clamp down on. I think, and I'm hoping, by the way, that the new administration will. So far, by the way, I think I'm happy with what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a president who's really pushing hard. I was talking to some of his officers, and they were telling me, they are really being pushed to make things happen.
Yeah.
And so I'm hoping that within this digitalized thinking, we'll be able to take this country to the next level.
Sure.
Yes.
Basanga, Koinange has always been using his shows across channels as a propaganda machine. Really? Really? Tony Morethi.
Yeah.
Ken calls it as he sees it. He is fearless, articulate, passionate, and on point. 100% agree with Ken Njiru. But we do need a mind shift, don't we?
We need
call it
a paradigm shift.
Paradigm shift.
We need a paradigm shift. We need a paradigm shift. I mean, Jeff, this continent is the richest continent in the world. You look at the Congo. The other day I was in the Congo, and in Kinshasa, I saw a river. I've never seen anything like that in my life. 5 kilometers wide, and I'm told in some places it is 20 kilometers wide, and it is flowing.
Yeah.
But the only thing I saw on that river was a tree being taken down to the sea. I didn't see barges going up carrying iron ore or bauxite, whatever they should be carrying.
Which is in
the Congo.
Yeah.
In fact, in the eastern side of the Congo, they are killing each other. Ushenzi of the worst caliber.
Is there hope, Ken? You talk about spiritual revolution.
You know, for me, as long as there's a God, there is hope. And indeed, by the way, again, history gives me the comfort of knowing that we are not, by the way, we are not even as bad as the European countries were a couple of years ago, 250 to 100 years ago.
Yeah.
If you look at what we call World War I, World War II, these were tribal wars, by the way.
Correct.
The Germans fighting the Italians, the Italians fighting the Russians, the Russians fighting the... It were tribal wars.
And it was brutal.
In fact, in those two wars, we are talking about 1,300 people, and God bless their souls, you know, the people who died. In those two wars, these guys killed between 50 and 80 million people. 50 and 80 million people.
And they call us savages.
Savages. And by the way, don't forget that most of us, as Africans, we were mobilized to go and fight in Burma and the rest of the places. We didn't even know what we were fighting about.
I have relatives who went to Burma.
Yes. We died for things that you didn't even understand.
Yeah.
And in any case, when we talk about these weapons of mass destruction and the guns that we're using and the bombs, who manufactures them? And what do they manufacture them? To what end?
What we saw at the AU in Addis the other day, Ken, was that African national, was that Pan-Africanism at its best?
I think it is Pan-Africanism. To some people, of course, they're saying it is ill-informed. But I think, just like any other continent or any other race, I think the African leaders have a right to question. Like I said, even their sense of justice. The African leaders have a right to question why only Africans. The African leaders have a right to question their belief, for instance, that some of these institutions are being used for regime change. I think they have a right to question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nixon Kanali, Ken Njiru hitting the nail on the head. The Ushenzi culture is pulling our development agenda backwards. Andrew Bwire, Ken is a good leader for a fact. Why don't you stand, Ken? Next time around, 17 is not far away. Why don't we get leaders like you? Get the campaign going. Get rid of that Ushenziness.
Maybe I'm waiting for the people to give me the call. The people.
Yeah. The people have spoken.
For me, by the way, I keep on saying that there are many ways to serve. If I wake up tomorrow and I feel a calling into politics, I'll go. But for now, I'm happy doing Ungwana, talking to the values thing, because many times I say, you know, just for instance, going to Parliament is not an end in itself. Just going to say Mr. Speaker sir and becoming another statistic. Yeah. I think it is important. And for me, by the way, I think it is important for this generation of ours to start mobilizing at another level. Maybe some of us will be in Parliament. Maybe some of us will be doing what we're doing. Maybe even those of us in business will continue pushing business in a fundamental way. And maybe, as I'm saying that, by the way, there's something that I would like to share, you know, on this program. In my mind, I keep saying that the first phase of the development of this country was led by nationalists, right? The second phase was largely led by the civil society and the young Turks, which brought us now where we are in terms of the new constitution. The third phase, I am clear in my mind, must be led by entrepreneurs, must be led by business. The other day I was watching a program called The Men Who Built America. And I came across gentlemen like J.P. Morgan, Cornelius Vanderbilt, Henry Ford. Yes. I came across Andrew Carnegie, the steel guy. And what strikes you is the fact that America was not built by money sent from the center. In fact, those days they didn't even have money. But these were men who conceptualized, who imagined, who innovated, who saw oil in the ground and who brought it up. Men who were constantly innovating, men who built railroads, mobilized resources. And to a point they got so big, by the way, they were even lending money to the government.
Speaking of which, I think there's one guy so far doing this on the continent of 1 billion people. Guy called Aliko Dangote.
Yes, Dangote.
Look at that.
He's doing it.
He's doing it from the business perspective.
From the business perspective.
And pumping money back in the continent.
Which also brings me to the whole question of what we're calling devolution. For me, by the way, devolution is not about just taking money to the center. In fact, if I was a governor today, I would be more concerned about the Weather Fund that is coming that would spur entrepreneurship. I keep telling people, the Kenyan government presently, for instance, employs about 500,000 people. When you talk about Walmart, it employs 1.4 million people. That's one organization. One organization, 1.4 million people. And you know what? We are reduced to fighting for space. Oh, how many Kikuyus have been employed? How many Luos have been employed? Oh, there is no Kisi. Oh, in fact, rather than asking ourselves, and this is a challenge I'm sending out to the young people, by the way, we must start believing. We must start dreaming. We must start doing, and by the way, for me, it's not just a question of business. I'm talking about entrepreneurship. And there's a difference between entrepreneurship and business.
Absolutely.
Business is you can sell tomatoes. Entrepreneurship is bringing new things that have never been brought to the space before. Mobile telephones, for instance, are new. We never had them. Yeah. That's entrepreneurship. What Safaricom has done, that's entrepreneurship. What James Mwangi has done with his Equity Bank, that's entrepreneurship. Yeah. Those are the people we need to multiply, not the politicians down here.
That's right.
Yeah.
Listen to Bankable here.
Yeah.
He or she says, what we need is 100% purge on the current status quo. 2 political cycles is all it'll take.
Yeah.
I'm done talking. 2 cycles, Ken?
But with a caution. The men and women who come in must be of a different mindset. But also, I keep on saying, even the ones we have, by the way, it's not that all is lost. I mean, you know many of them. We talk to them. On a normal day, they are rational. But sometimes, by the way, the people themselves even make them behave the way they behave. Because, Jeff, I can assure you today, and maybe for me, sometimes I feel maybe that's one of the reasons why I've not even gone for political office. You go down to the ground. Do you know what they tell you? Mukono mtupu hailampwi. And that is the people of the Republic of Kenya.
Correct.
And so what happens? The people carrying money bags
handouts,
are the people handouts. Bangi, alcohol. Those are the people you elect. And so I'm saying it must be an overhaul which we must lead. And that doesn't mean, by the way, you cannot be elected. I'm not saying you cannot be elected without money necessarily. But I'm saying on a global scale, something is fundamentally wrong.
Absolutely. Otherwise, and I keep coming to this again, and I said this at the old bench, I'll say it in the new bench, we get what we deserve.
We get the leaders we deserve. In fact, our leaders are a reflection of who we are. Even as we are condemning the KDF, they are a reflection of who we are.
Yeah. One more tweet. Jeremy Washira, I hope our leaders are watching.
I hope so too.
Ken Njiru.
I hope so too.
Keep the Iguana Campaign Initiative Institute. Keep it going, my brother. Make it a mass movement.
It will grow into a mass movement, God willing.
Until somebody hears what we're saying.
We'll keep moving it.
Let's keep shouting from the mountaintop.
Asante, Jeff.
Or is it the rooftop?
From the rooftop, mountaintops, kila pahali, and even the valleys.
There you go.
We will go there.
Good to see you, my brother.
Thank you, Jeff.
Good luck.
And keep going.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ken Njiru there. What sense the man is speaking? It's not rocket science. We can turn this around if we just shed off our ushenziness. Tomorrow night on Jeff Koinange Live, you don't want to miss it. Some people say he's been hiding under a rock for the last 6 months. Tony Gashaka is going to come out with another shocker. It's a show you don't want to miss. He'll be joined by Okia Umtata, that's right, the man who founded the March 4th movement. There's not going to be enough space on this bench, but we're going to try. You cannot afford to miss tomorrow's show. Thanks for joining us. Keep the tweets coming. We'll keep chatting and discussing this throughout the night as long as we can and into tomorrow. Because unless we stop talking, this is never gonna go away. This has been Jeff Koinange Live only on Kenya's television network. You know it, KTN. Thank you, good night, and good luck.